My name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas. Nice to have you back, Charles. Did you enjoy your trip away?
Thank you, Jerm. I did. It is very nice to be back. And I wonder what we'll talk about today. I suppose be my opener. No, I think it's good. It's the whole change being as good as a rest, I think, is very valid. I do like that. I like the idea of just having a different perspective, even for a short time. And I think people really would do well to do that, even if it's only for a day. And I think this is one of my issues with the way in which the world has gone, is that everything is on all the time. And I think that does people no good at all, because there is never that moment for reflection, contemplation, just changing your perspective a tiny bit. And you don't need to go on holidays to do that, but I think it would be a great thing if people spent more time doing it. But sadly, almost everything is aimed at people not doing that, never having that moment to sort of put the head above water and just reconsider.
It's the distraction economy.
Yeah, it is, and it pays good dividend as well. It's very easy to see all the time, and it is pretty astonishing the stuff that people do get carried along with. In fact, Mike and I were talking on the telephone earlier about the incredible ramping up of the idea that there is a very present threat to the United Kingdom, in some way or other, largely predicated on the idea that Russia intends us harm, but certainly not exclusively. And people are being bombarded by them. And I think that to an extent, people are becoming aware of the fact that they are being preyed upon, but that in the main, I don't think really makes people think that that there's anything more to it. Sadly, I think people seem to see it as genuine, even though it is a monstrous bombardment.
You know what's really ironic, though, is that Karl Marx actually argued for the same thing. He said that people need to work less and enjoy their leisure time more.
You're a Marxist now?
I was actually chatting to a relative of mine who is an artist, and he was saying that one of the problems of the modern society, the distraction economy, is that you don't actually have enough time now anymore to do anything or too many things for yourself. And you have to schedule, like you just did, Charles. You got to schedule in time. Sorry, you got to schedule in time to have leisure time. And it's a very strange concept if you just break it apart like that.
There's a certain cultural aspect of this as well. I mean, for example, in Northern Ireland, you come towards the end of the workday and inevitably somebody says, right, beer, and everybody just decants to the pub. I lived in Holland for a couple of years and I attempted the same gag and said, right, who's going for a beer? And all the diaries came out. Well, I can go next Thursday. And it's just, so there's, in other countries, what I'm saying is that situation is worse. And actually, I think in Britain, probably people are, obviously they have their daily work obligations, but they're probably quite a bit more willing to just go and do something different by the time the day finishes.
It does kind of force the question of why do we spend so much time working? And it really does actually make a lot of sense when you question. I mean, everything now.
But you're going to be calling for universal basic income next. Now, so a Marxist and calling for UBI in the same conversation. This is brilliant, Jerm. I have to say, when we were just before I started with the column, we were myself and my family were living in France for a while, and already at that stage they had a kind of UBI in place for people that were artists or musicians, and there was an obligation that if people were receiving this money from the state, that they were required to do X number of performances a month or whatever, or produce X number of paintings, whatever it was. But that allowed them to not worry about where the next loaf of bread was coming from, and
Patronage.
to concentrate on, it was a form of patronage, but it was from the state. Now, we can have a discussion about whether that's a good thing or not, but for those individuals, it certainly was a good thing because it gave them the space to let their creativity be the primary consideration, and not the where's the next buck coming from.
No, I mean, I'm obviously not arguing in favor.
And I want just to clarify, I'm not in any way calling for universal basic income here, because I think actually the motivation behind the people that are pushing for UBI at this point in history is somewhat different from the motivation from the people that created that policy at that time in France.
For sure. No. What I'm saying is that there's a hard contrast between what we now see as work and what we see as leisure time. I don't see what I do as work. I enjoy this. This for me is great. So this is leisure in an abstract sense. But there is this 9 to 5 kind of mentality where people wake up early in the morning, they get dressed, and they just go through the motion of sitting in traffic, sitting in an office, and then sitting in traffic, coming home when it's dark, and doing the same thing over and over and over. And that I can't see as hugely personally beneficial for extended periods of time.
We're constantly talking about what can I do, and so on, and acts of resistance and so on. My view is that everybody should be, pursuing a day-to-day job, in inverted commas, which is something which really inspires them. And I realize that there are many reasons why people can't always find a way to do that. But I think that's, that is the ideal existence, is to be doing something that, you actually want to get up for in the morning. And this sort of system that we have at the moment, where people are, for the last lot of decades actually, where people are just getting up and living for the Friday and Saturday night. This isn't a good way to live.
Well, I'm going to try and force a segue here, because I wanted to actually ask you about something completely unrelated, but I think I can find the link here. A very, very good friend of mine. Then? Go for it. What do you want to say?
Your efforts. Well, no, only to extend what it is that we are currently talking about, because I think it's something that does require more thought, but also just the definition. I think it's unfortunate, but it's also deliberate that the term work is used to apply to all of these different things. So if you're working in such a way as you entirely set the parameters yourself, you are doing something that you love, that inspires you, that does provide you with a living, whatever that may mean, and that in effect your work and your life are symbiotic in their positivity, and it is an upward spiral, then that's fantastic. But that very word is also used to describe the people who do the daily grind, and in effect somebody else's bidding. So that distinction between whether or not you're following a path that you actually want to be following, whether you are pursuing goals that you do consider to be significant and important and will have a positive impact on your life, the fact that that's all lumped in together is most unfortunate, because it then means that work can be labelled as being, sort of bad or something that you do, you don't really want to be doing. Well, why not? If you're passionate about something, or you are creating something, or whatever it is, you want to be doing more of it. You want to increase your capacity, and you don't necessarily need to do exactly like Mike's describing. There's this queuing up of everything, waiting for the weekend to have that escapism, or whatever it is that people think. So I think we are, gets us another area in which we're channeled into a very narrow range of thoughts about this particular topic, but I think those distinctions are absolutely enormous. To consider somebody who is working for, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a big corporation, but typically it would be sort of a big corporation. It's a drudge. The work itself is not very interesting, and certainly it doesn't align with what you want the world to be doing, or indeed your part of the world to be doing. That is completely different from what somebody who runs their own enterprise, whatever that may be, and is succeeding. They're not at all comparable, and yet we're made to think that they are. And I think that's unfortunate.
Well, I'll hold back on my segue a little bit because I want to expand on something that you just said there. You said work, whatever that means. Now, this is something that's very real to me right now. My wife is going to have a baby in less than 2 months. So she's cutting back on work commitments, obviously. But yes, what's interesting, so we were having this discussion. So you earn less because you work less. However, the value of working less at this point is higher than were she going to work, if that makes sense. So there's a quality of life that adjusts, and she's going to probably keep it like that. She's going to readjust the way in which she works, after our kid is born. And the physical amount of money that you get will be less, but the quality of life will be higher.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think that, again, that's another fundamental relationship that a lot of people don't understand and are quite deliberately made to not understand. I think people are, by and large, sold the idea that money, success, and happiness are all sort of rolled up together, and that they all involve the maximum amount of money, but also, curiously, sort of the maximum amount of time. I mean, I can remember from years ago when people still thought it was interesting to talk about their jobs, hearing people who went to work, particularly in the City of London, and it was talking about the sort of chat about being up at 4 o'clock in the morning, as though that was somehow a positive. You work really hard. Yeah, okay, you might be earning a lot of money, but you're getting no sleep. I mean, also telling somebody in the army that you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning is not really the way to try and sort of sell your story necessarily. It doesn't have that much of an impact. But yeah, it's sort of perverse. The lure of being in a trap that you sort of, people knew they were in. And they were absolute slaves to a system which, yes, remunerated them very well, but for what? And then suddenly you're 45. So it is very, very unfortunate that people don't get this sort of input. And of course, it's very difficult when you're young. You can't understand if you haven't yet entered the workplace. None of this really means anything to you. It's not until you do tip up into a job and you start to get a sense of what it means. And that exposure could entirely condition the rest of your career, depending on who the people are around you at that, kind of first contact moment, and what it is that you are set off doing. And whether you react, you might react against it and go away and do something else, or you might be thinking, "Oh, this does really fit, does work." But sadly, I think for a lot of people, there isn't that degree of consideration. It's just kind of an acceptance of, "Oh, well, this is what it is."
We've got a saying here that probably has a variation on your side of the world, but it's a question: is a Bushman poor?
Right.
And
yeah.
It's obviously a rhetorical question because it depends on the context. But I mean, if you brought him into the city, then sure, he'd be poor. But if you go to the Kalahari Desert and you go camping there, then the question has an entirely different answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully people are more and more coming to realize this. I don't have any evidence to substantiate that, but one must imagine that to be the case. Going back to just comments a little while ago about the sort of the ramping up of the fear and this, that, and the other. I think that has prompted a lot of people to disassociate themselves from a lot of the things that were driving them into that state of anxiety, and to be conscious about what it is that you don't engage with anymore. People do it. They do see it. I can only hope that it's going to be more and more.
Okay, so I'm going to try and force my segue that I wanted to force earlier, and that is
Good luck.
a very, very, very close friend of mine, South African, emigrated to your side of the world, the UK, a few years ago. And just last week, in fact, he became a British citizen. And he sent me a photograph of some ceremonial thing that he has to do with the king. He has to pledge allegiance to the crown or something. What is all that about?
Well, I mean,
Is it just ceremonial, or does it have any kind of significance?
define significance.
I don't know. It's something that's outside of my frame of reference.
Well, what happens if somebody wants to become a South African citizen? What they must have to go through some kind of ceremonial swearing of allegiance to the country.
Yeah, there's no monarchy there. That's what I'm trying to fathom is, so you have so the UK has got a parliamentary structure, and then it's got the monarchy. So how significant is a monarchy? Is it just ceremonial?
Well, these days it's absolutely just ceremonial. But I mean, we are supposed to live. The UK is, or at least Britain is supposed to be a constitutional monarchy, and the monarch is supposed to play a role in the running of the country, in the sense of he's taken a coronation oath and he's promised certain things, including upholding the laws and customs of the nation, and he's supposed to give royal assent. He's supposed to be the last check and balance on the excesses of an out of control executive.
You're talking about Charles?
I'm talking about Charles. Yes, he is the embodiment of the state, as it were, and he's supposed to play a role. Now that role has been given up by the last, well, this and the previous monarch at the very least, and so these things are basically all done on his behalf now by Privy Council or whoever it happens to be. It's just a rubber stamping exercise, the giving of royal assent now. So he gives the King's Speech every year, which is the government's agenda for the coming Parliament, and so, or at least at the beginning of every parliamentary session, he does this, and so it's largely ceremonial these days. In fact, probably totally. So but in terms of your friend becoming a citizen, I don't think that it's any different to any other, becoming a citizen of any other country. There'll be some ceremonial process, some swearing of allegiance to the state, and the state just happens to be embodied, in the case of Britain, by however we describe King Charles.
Yeah, I just looked it up while you were talking, and you're correct. It says, yeah, I'm sure you'll be correct. It says, yeah, you're swearing loyalty to the crown, which in British constitutional law is not the king as a person, but the abstract legal and governmental entity of the state itself, which is what you just said.
Well, that's actually a fairly unknown or misunderstood, or is there such a word as ununderstood? Because nobody really understands exactly what the nature of the crown is these days, and it has been discussed in Parliament, the question of whether the crown is a corporation sole or a corporation aggregate. It's some kind of corporate entity, no matter what it is, and exactly what the relationship between the crown, Parliament, the City of London is still a matter of a lot of discussion and debate.
What is the current sort of pop understanding then, if you talk about the crown?
I don't think there is any current pop understanding. I mean, if you're thinking in terms of the more conspiratorial understanding, it would be that the crown represents or is the city of London and the Crown are effectively synonymous. Really, it's the City of London that's at the head of the state. Of course, you could just bring it down to the lowest level, that the Crown represents the Epstein class.
So what was the Crown?
That probably wouldn't be. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so then,
well, theoretically, the Crown is.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of the head of an organisation like the Church of England is the Archbishop of Canterbury. That office is the head of that particular institution. Well, you may view the Crown as being similar. It's occupied by an individual, but it's an institution in and of itself. You could say the same about the presidency in the United States. It's occupied by an individual, but there's something. The presidency is something different to the person who's occupying it at the time, and should have a higher. How to describe it? It should represent higher principles. I don't think that is the case in any country anymore.
When we talk about the Crown, though, I know we're talking about the UK as a whole, but is it seen kind of equally across the UK, or does it have like a preference in England?
I think across the whole of it, maybe Charles can answer this a bit better, but I think across the whole of the UK, there's the people are quite divided on what they think. I would say there's mostly complete ambivalence, other than, well, the royal family, because the first thing to say is that most people don't understand the difference between the royal family and the Crown. So most people would just view the royal family as being something that's there to encourage tourism and some kind of quaint institution that attracts people to the United Kingdom. There's definitely a growing Republican movement within the UK that sees the royal family and the royal family's behaviour as being something that would be a good excuse to get rid of the Crown and so on. But equally, you've got people that are through and through royalist. So I think opinion is divided on this. But Charles, I don't know if you've got something to add.
Well, I think, like you say, it's very hard to tell exactly sort of who is where and what they think. Of course, we know there are groups of people who think all of those things. I think probably there are, I would say, more in the category of disappointed royalists or disappointed monarchists than necessarily Republicans, in that they believe that having a monarchy makes sense and should be workable, but that the occupants of the post, the most recent one, the current one, very much undermines the relationship between the Crown and the subjects, let's say. So I think that that is definitely a problem. Just on the allegiance thing, I mean, I do think that is interesting because, of course, it's anomalous in that if you are simply born or rather registered as a British citizen from birth, at no point in your life do you ever have to pledge such allegiance. Do you know?
Unless you go into some kind of service, Charles.
Indeed, yeah. In which case, then you do. What I wondered was whether there's anything in the text of that pledge that suggests that you're going to be receiving the protection from the monarch. Do you know? I don't know if I've ever read it.
I do have one line from it. Not that, yes. So yes, something that he had to repeat. I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors according to law.
Yeah. It's just, maybe there is a bit about this, but the one-sided nature of that, certainly if that is the extent of it, is quite stark. This is, it absolutely should be a a two-way street.
What I would say on that, Charles, though, is the two-way street. No matter what happens in the ceremony for citizenship, the two-way street is represented starkly represented in the coronation oath, because the monarch is required to swear that he will uphold effectively the rights, the laws, the customs of the people, and he's absolutely making a pledge to give protection to the people. And as you say, when if anybody that's born in this country that's automatically a subject/citizen, that protection is therefore presumed, and also the allegiance is also presumed.
Yeah, it's a lot of presumption.
Yeah, I know.
So the reason why I'm asking is because my views I've made clear on my show many times. I'm no fan of democracy in its current international form.
That's because you're a Marxist.
Yes, because I'm a Marxist. But I've read Plato's Republic, and I actually align quite a lot with what he says. Not everything, but I do align with also the work of Hans Hermann Hoppe. He argues that monarchy actually is superior to democracy, and I am a fan, therefore, of a monarchical structure. But what fascinates me is how the UK kind of balances this kind of this kind of parliamentary structure with the monarchy. I would have thought that it's simply easier just to have a straightforward monarchy.
Right. So in the next 10 minutes, you're wanting, 800 or 900 years of history. Is that it?
No, I think I'm just trying to get kind of a context of how it actually is, in reality. Because what I see obviously is media. I don't live this. I don't know how it affects me on a day-to-day basis. You do.
I mean, I think one of the issues for Britain has been that historically we haven't had very many good monarchs. So Henry VII, perhaps, Queen Anne, perhaps, but the rest haven't been that great for with respect to the country or the people. And if we think that what's going on in the United States with Donald Trump, I think has taken inspiration to a great extent from some of the worst excesses of British monarchy, and it is simply using his position as an opportunity to enrich himself. So, there aren't that many cases. There is definitely an argument for the benign dictator and as being a good way to run things, but I'm not sure that we've seen it actually work that often in history. If ever. And so
was the Queen not benign? I mean, or did she ever actually interfere? I believe there's something called reserve powers.
No, she never. I'm not aware that she ever interfered. And in fact, despite the fact that she was petitioned to interfere on at least one occasion over Maastricht by the barons who got together and invoked Article 61 of Magna Carta. I think this was 2001.
I think so.
Charles, I think it was.
I think it was, yeah.
And that was given a good ignoring by Queen Elizabeth. So, of course, she was beholden to her advisors, and maybe not only to her advisors. But I remember when we held a conference would have been 2009, I guess. And one of the speakers at it was a guy called John Gourier, who was very, very well connected and so on. And he told us at the time that he had witnessed Queen Elizabeth being literally screamed at by Jacob Rothschild. I can't remember the details of what it was about, or I'm not even sure whether he knew what it was about. But this perhaps gives an indication as to the likelihood that the person who's occupying that position isn't necessarily the person who's actually in charge or is in a position to do anything, even if they wanted to.
So, an interesting connection here is a conversation I had with PD Lawton last week. I don't think it's come out yet, about Britain's influence over various African politics, which I'm sure it's pretty obvious. But listen to this. The City of London, aka the famous Square Mile, is not governed like anywhere else in Britain. It has its own Lord Mayor, its own police force, its own ancient constitution, and its own electoral rules where businesses, not just residents, get to vote. So when the sovereign enters the City of London, they are met at Temple Bar by the Lord Mayor, who symbolically offers the sword of the city, which the sovereign must acknowledge. This is not mere pageantry. It reflects centuries-old arrangement where the corporation of the city said no to the Crown's attempt to extend jurisdiction over it in the 1630s and won. This is an institution that has historically operated outside royal authority, not beneath it. Now, that certainly ties into what P. Lawton was saying about the influence over South Africa and of course Kenya and many other countries. Is that just ceremonial, or do you think there is some substance there?
Well, my question would be: is it just apocryphal? Because although that has been stated many times, I've yet to see any actual evidence for it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not true, and because I think what I've just described, which was this was a witness statement of a relationship between a banker and the head, effectively the occupant of the crown at the time, that gives an indication about how the hierarchy works. And so I'm not going to say that what you've just read out is wrong, because I think there is circumstantial evidence to suggest that it's right, but I haven't seen anything definitive. And I'm just going to say that doesn't mean that it's not true. I think I tend to believe what you've just read out. I'm just saying that there's still some. We're still short of a little bit of definitive evidence for it. I think the legal system is based in the City of London. The financial system is based in the City of London. Everything is pretty much that is the source of the power of the British Empire as it was as a political empire. But it's still, whether you can consider it as being an empire in the traditional sense or not, it still behaves like one. And although it's become a sort of transatlantic empire now, it absolutely still behaves like one. But that is the seat of the power, even to this day.
Yeah, my apologies. The episode with P. Lawton did come out. It came out on UK Column on Friday. It's on the website.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Charles.
Yeah. What do you agree with that, or is it just a little bit too dark?
I don't think it's too dark at all. And to your point about Freemasonry, I mean, the alignment there with the City of London, and of course the way in which the city is tied up with the courts as well, and the most obvious connection there is that the election of need to get this right, the sheriffs, the two sheriffs which are elected every year, is conducted on St. John's Day, Midsummer Day, 24th of June, and that's the day that the Grand Lodge was founded in 1717, and is still the most important feast day in the Masonic calendar, and that's a key date for the city, and so I don't think anything that's described in those terms should be considered as being improbable just because it sounds sort of strange or different. Customs of all sorts, whether they're purely ceremonial, still absolutely remain to this day all across. I mean, I would say, and this is not, of course, it's not going to be exclusive to the United Kingdom, but there are many parts of the country that still uphold what have become traditions for reasons that that people these days might not necessarily even understand, and that there's always therefore that possibility that it has become purely ceremonial and doesn't have any functional meaning. But in some instances, I think the meaning is absolutely still there. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's one other thing we should say at this point, Jerm, again, which gives a very deep hint at the relationship between the City of London and the rest of the United Kingdom, and that is the existence of the Remembrancer, the City Remembrancer in the House of Commons, and this is effectively a lobbyist who is there at every House of Commons session, and whose job it is to make sure that nothing happens in that chamber that can have any kind of detrimental effect on the city. So he's effectively there to control what Parliament does.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and because it's things like that that give absolute justification to people who have huge doubt or skepticism or any other thoughts, considerations on the matter, because the amount of information that's put out about that is so minimal, and there is so little to go on. It's all these areas in which you'd think that the way to deal with it would be to put out the right information and therefore assuage people's concerns. But no, it's that's not the way it's done, and therefore I think it's completely legitimate that people do have concerns, and they are quite rightly about that. I mean, specifically the Remembrancer.
So I've had a number of Catholic guests on my show, and most recently Michael Jones, and he very aggressively argues that the Vatican, has been infiltrated. Vatican II and before that Vatican I. Now, I'm not a Catholic, so I don't know too much about that. But in a similar way, has the monarchy been infiltrated over the centuries, or has it infiltrated?
Infiltrated by whom?
No, I don't know, because you could argue that it is a corrupted version of perhaps what it once might have been.
I don't think so. I think it's always been what it is, and as you know, because as I say, there haven't been too many instances where any monarch has actually managed to behave any better. Really, I think if there's been infiltration of the nation, it's happened. In more recent decades at the parliamentary level and the corporate level with the rise of the Israeli lobby, for example. But I think the monarchy, the City of London, those two institutions are what they've always been.
The reason why I ask that is because, again, in Hopp's book, Democracy, The God That Failed, which is a really good read, by the way, he says that a monarchy is a lot more resilient towards foreign influence because the monarch treats the country as his own, as private property, whereas a democratic government is way more prone to being influenced and infiltrated. And that's why I was wondering whether or not the monarchy itself has maintained sovereignty over the UK. Clearly, if we look at it now, it's not the case. So I'm wondering where that has happened and if that's linked to the rise of the parliamentary aspect of the UK.
Well, no, because, for example, many would argue that the Glorious Revolution of 1688 and 1689 was exactly that, the moving into Britain of a foreign power, in this case represented by William of Orange, and he with him came. I mean, that's really when the modern City of London was founded, with the founding of the Bank of England and so on, and that came as that all came as a direct result of the infiltration, perhaps, of the country by a foreign power, if you want to put it that way. And if it is fascinating that if you think back to the Middle Ages and where the early days of the Silk Road and the trading empire and the banking empire at that time was based in Venice and in Florence. I mean, the banking empire was based in Florence. The trading empire was based in Venice.
The Venetians.
But that banking system was known as the Lombard banking system because that Lombardy was where it was based, and that over the following centuries migrated west to Amsterdam and then into London. Which is why if you go to the city of London, you'll see Lombard Street and the Lombard Midland Bank was a thing. There's references back to that time because it is the successor to that same system.
Charles, what influence do you think the Church of England had on where the UK is today?
In relation to the monarch, do you mean?
Yes, and what appears to be a very weak sovereignty.
Well, and a very weak church. No, I mean, yeah.
Because when did that really occur in the 1500s? Say, when did the church?
Going back to Henry VIII. So, yeah, I mean, from the start, I think it would be right to say that the Church of England was, from the start, compromised and in the pocket of the monarch, because he gave rise to its inception. I don't think I know enough about what's come and gone in the intervening period to really give a clear picture of where and how the balance of power has necessarily shifted. But I think now we're definitely in a position where, it's very interesting to see that there's a total lack of what one might call moral leadership from either the Crown or the Church. And that is exactly where it should be coming from. So in terms of infiltration, which is, I think, not really the word I would use. I think the word I would use is influence, and whether or not, either the monarch or the church, whether they are in fact in charge of their own operation. And I think that's a point that deserves attention, deserves continual debate, really, and you could absolutely argue that back through the years. And I think this is the obvious person to call upon in this regard would be Alex Thompson, who would be able to give, I think, a very good idea of exactly how things have unfolded over the years. And I think that would be completely fascinating. But no, I mean, now, is it coincidence that we see society in the way that we do now, both at a national level, I mean, particularly in the United Kingdom, but also generally worldwide, as entering into quite a steep decline in so many ways? And then we look at we look at the Crown and the Church, and I would say we see failure, absolute failure, really, in both areas. I mean, funnily enough, and I know there was more on Friday's news programme, but I reported on Wednesday's programme last week about the statements that the Archbishop of Canterbury made at the General Synod in York last week about the situation in Gaza. Well, I mean, I suppose effectively the relationship between the State of Israel and the Christian Church in the region. And, this has caused quite some controversy. But what will happen? I mean, the Archbishop has said, or at least has, I suppose she has upheld remarks in the Kairos Declaration, but she hasn't necessarily stuck her neck further out, certainly not in such a way as to suggest there's going to be any kind of action. But then what does the monarch done? As far as we're aware, absolutely nothing. So, I mean, historically, I wouldn't want to give a best guess because it's just not, it's not going to be good enough. But I think now, to look at the situation now, it's fascinating. But then again, so is the relationship between the monarch now, this idea of faith or faiths, and exactly where he is aligned and what he does believe. That is again, a minefield. It appears very confusing, and the Church of England definitely does not seem to be the beneficiary.
No, I'm asking these questions also because the undercurrent is that if we have a good picture of our past, we can also have a fairly decent picture of our future. And I do wonder whether or not the monarchy has the power to shift things for the UK into a better direction. And I say that because I would like to see the US not fail. I would like to see the UK not fail. Obviously, all of these things are a desire for excellence. We want a better world, obviously. So I'm trying to wrap my head around where the balance of power in the UK should be, since it is, the British Empire is pretty significant, in world history and where we are today. And if we think about it, I mean, the British Empire also kind of created Israel. It played a big role in the creation of Israel, which suggests to me that there is definitely some kind of corruption going on historically. And I wonder now if there is a way that the monarchy can turn it back.
Not with this incumbent, because don't forget this incumbent went to Davos and literally gave the launching speech for the Great Reset. This incumbent has, like his father, been. I can't even say that he's a conservationist or an environmentalist because he has always played a political game in this respect. So he doesn't get involved in the day-to-day politics of the country, but he does get involved has in the past and still from time to time gets involved at an international level on the whole net zero thing, and is a major proponent of that type of internationalist policy. So he's not going to do anything.
That's a very politically correct answer. What do you think, Mike? I mean, do you think that there is actually a light at the end of the tunnel? Can the monarchy turn things around for the UK? Is what I'm actually asking. I'm asking for your opinion.
No, the answer is simply no, and the reason is because I actually think it doesn't matter much what style of government you have. If you have an abdicated population, if people are not interested in how the country is run and aren't prepared to make their voices heard, everything devolves into dictatorship. It doesn't matter what your starting point is as far as a political system goes. Obviously some political systems start with dictatorship and start with brutality. Others start with perhaps good intention. But remember, what was Magna Carta? Magna Carta was effectively a peace treaty between it's presented as being a peace treaty between the barons and the crown, but actually the townspeople, the freemen, were represented as well at Runnymede. So all those things are part and parcel. Everybody was represented there. It was a peace treaty between the people and the crown. So this is not, unless people get involved in holding their monarchs to account, or the monarch or their governments, whatever style of government it is, to account, they end up becoming on the receiving end of dictatorship. That's the way it goes.
Well, clearly, sorry, go on, Charles.
No, just the hypothetical of could, because I think that's how I'm interpreting your question. Could the monarchy theoretically change the situation if it weren't for the fact that the king himself is absolutely, by virtue of all the things that Mike describes, he is very much a part of the problem. But to the infiltration influence, I don't think that, even if there were a monarch or a monarchy, a royal family who were genuinely wanting to act in the way that we might think was becoming and appropriate, I don't think it would be possible for them to exert sufficient influence. And I think a lot of that is because over successive generations, and this is exactly what Mike describes with what John Gurrier saw with Rothschild screaming at the Queen, or numerous other instances. They have in effect completely compromised themselves. They have lost any sense of real or moral authority, and I don't think you can claim that back. Look at the newspapers now with this. In fact, this is going to be comic for people who do take an interest in these things. I know there was a World Cup final on last night. I don't actually know what happened. I don't much mind, but I dare say it was terribly exciting for plenty of people. But what are we told repeatedly now over these summer months is how important it is that Prince William, the heir to the throne, loves football, and in particular Aston Villa, and how we see video clips of him going absolutely crazy when Aston Villa, I think, score a goal. I mean, to come back from that as your sort of selling point to trying to put your country back on track, I don't think that's a gulf that can be bridged. It is completely ridiculous, the position that they have put themselves in. It's very undignified. But the problem is that it's a slippery slope. They're far too far down it for the media and the media controllers to ever allow that situation to be turned around. So I would say it's lost. I can't see how that could be brought back on track. No.
Well, I was going to say, my very good friend who became a British citizen clearly thinks that there is hope, which is why he emigrated from South Africa to the UK. So
yeah. No, fair enough. I'm not saying there's not hope. All I'm saying is that I don't think the monarchy is going to sort the situation out. I think those are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's going to take something like another Runnymede.
Yes.
Yeah, well, okay. So the moral of the story is that it's much of the same. That's effectively what's happening now. So not much is going to change at those higher levels.
Well, I think that no, but hold on a second. I think more of the same. No, I think we're actually in a much worse position now than we have been in the past, because the mechanisms of control, the tools that are available to the state, are significantly more powerful than they were in the past. With a much smaller population, it was perhaps possible to get away easier from the worst excesses of the state in the past. I think we're heading in a direction that absolutely needs to be reversed, because the tools that they have available are very dangerous.
Okay, well, to answer your question, Charles, it was Spain that won. Spain beat Argentina. I think 1-0. I don't watch football. Okay, I'm going to truncate this because I know that, Mike, you've got a busy day, so we'll come in for landing just a few minutes earlier. Any last thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jerm.
Come on. I'll chuck one in.
When you say final thoughts, just what do you mean by that exactly?
Exactly. Mike's chair.
We always need to round things off,
flip backwards and tip him into a pit of fire.
Yeah, we always need to horseshoe to the beginning to round things off. Okay, Charles, give us something.
Yeah, okay. Well, in fact, all right, now I am delighted that you've told me the World Cup football result, because the geopolitical ramifications, bearing in mind the extraordinary Trump intervention in the whatever it was that was overturned, was it a red card or something that was overturned? I mean, utterly bizarre. But when you consider the stance of the government of Argentina versus the government of Spain, and indeed probably to a certain extent their populations, on the activities of the State of Israel and the backers of the State of Israel and all the rest of that's tied in actual fact, a very interesting contest, especially if it has gone the way of the Spaniards. I wonder what the repercussions may be.
All right, Mike, Charles, catch up with you next week.
If you're enjoying this programme, you can help us bring more news, articles, comment and interviews to more people. It's your support that makes our coverage possible. Our goal for 2026 is for 10,000 new members. Join a worldwide community of UK Column supporters on our website, or alternatively on Substack or YouTube.